Seems fair to me.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Hey, thank you very much for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook after a one-week absence. Thanks for keeping the candle in the window. We have a lot of things to talk about, so let's meet our gold medal winning panelists, starting with Wendy Wiese from KTRS, Bill McClellan from the Post-Dispatch, Joe Holleman, also from the Post and STLtoday.com, and editor and columnist with the St. Louis American, Alvin Reid. Before we begin, quick shout out to Ken Beanie, great local artist who has shared his artwork with us. There it is on the mantle behind us in our series of rotating monthly exhibitions here at 9PBS. Thanks a lot, Ken, and there's his website so you can get more information. Thanks for sharing your talents with us. Well, Bill, you're from the land of Lincoln, and papers across the land are prognosticating, trying to figure out who's going to be the vice presidential candidate that'll run with Kamala Harris, the presumptive Democratic nominee for president on the Democratic ticket, of course. And J.B. Pritzker, the governor of the land of Lincoln, is being, his name anyway, has been floated as a possible vice presidential candidate with Ms. Harris. What do you think?
Have these prognosticators not seen a picture of the governor? I mean, I don't mean to be too rude about this, but Americans don't vote for, the political parties are not willing to take the risk that Americans are going to vote for someone who's overweight. And so I don't think that the governor of Illinois has a chance. Plus, Illinois is already a blue state. I mean, the logic says to go for somebody in a purple state or a battleground state, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Arizona, not Illinois. But I'm afraid that as a people, we are too shallow to look beyond the fact that the governor of Illinois needs to lose a few pounds.
And I agree with Bill. And I know that people are, as the argument was going on about Joe Biden and whether he should lead the race or not, it was coming down to like, well, you just don't like old people. And I said, like, that had nothing to do with it. This was just about how he was expressing himself or not expressing himself. Same thing with Bill to say. I'm not saying that we should weight shame people and things like that, but let's just be honest about this. I think they would see that image and is not one that would carry you to victory in November, and Illinois is a deep, deep blue state.
I disagree because I think a lot of Americans, you know, are rather large, and they might like to see someone who looks kind of like themselves. I think his problem is that for 10 years in a row, Illinois has lost population, and because of the mismanagement of the budget, now there's $43,000 in debt for each and every resident. So I think those are the big issues. I agree. Someone, you know, who's moderate like Mark Kelly or Josh Shapiro would be a better candidate, but the size, I don't think Americans care.
I can see the jokes already. He can lose population, but he can't lose weight.
Oh. Wow. Those of us on this side of the table, Mr. McClellan and Mr. Reid, we would like a moment for rebuttal. He is the wealthiest elected official in the nation. He brings the deepest possible pockets to a Kamala Harris ticket, and I just love the fact that the only thing missing is the cigar, right? I mean, he is such a throwback to old school. He is checked off every box in terms of social issues. I've always thought that he would end up in the White House or White House adjacent.
But I agree that he won't be the VP candidate. But I don't think it has to do with that. I don't think it got that far. And I think it's battleground states. Now they pick it out there. You've got, not only do you have a guy in Arizona, he's an astronaut.
Right. And
okay, it's real tough to beat an astronaut for cool. And then you have Josh Shapiro, another battleground state, is also an interesting one because he's Jewish. And I'm interested to see what the Democratic Party is going to do as far as their relationship with Jewish voters. So I think the fact of whether Pritzker is majestically built, as I like to say, I think it's not even going to get to that point. I really do believe it's between Kelly and Shapiro.
Okay, how about the guy in North Carolina? I mean, that's
he's probably be the third guy that I would pick.
Okay.
But I think Kelly and Shapiro would be
what I'm saying is, you are saying that the American voter is not too shallow to look at things like that.
No,
and I'm saying the American voter elected Donald Trump to be president the first time.
Right.
And I'm not hating on Donald Trump. I'm just saying that
doesn't sound
all of
like
a sudden,
it at all.
you know, no, I'm just saying that the American public is looking at things that the American public did not used to look at when they were voting for people.
What I'm saying is I'm not defending the taste of the American public. What I'm saying is it won't get to that point.
I don't know.
I agree with that.
I don't think Jack LaLanne is on Mount Rushmore, okay? So I don't know if it matters.
That's right. Teddy Roosevelt was not a small guy.
He was not. I want to ask you about Ron Kruszewski, who's the chairman and the CEO of Stifel, one of the largest financial corporations in America. It happens to be in downtown St. Louis at the corner of Washington and Broadway. And this past Friday, he gave an interview with the St. Louis Business Journal and talked about that Rams money that actually was first given to the city back in 2021. It hasn't been spent yet, about $250 million as the result of that lawsuit settlement. So Kruszewski tells the St. Louis Business Journal, if you don't spend it on downtown St. Louis, and I've been down there working there for 27 years, that'll be a message, and I may redirect future employees not to Clayton, but to Dallas, Texas. Does that pretty much mean that Rams money is going to be spent now in downtown St. Louis on roads and sidewalks?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. If all of the, the hints, the winks, the sort of nudges have not loosened the purse strings to this point, I don't know if this is gonna do it. But yes, you're right. He's calling for the $98 million at least to be used on the sidewalks, on the roads, on other projects, and there's still this incredible resistance to it. And yeah, he's saying he's going to leave the employees who are downtown and have been since 1890. He's going to leave them there. But in terms of new employees, correct, those are the ones that he will make sure go somewhere else, and not Clayton, but Texas and elsewhere.
You could come at me in a lot of ways, but that sounded like a threat to me, and I don't deal in threats. And if you say like, okay, all right, I'm not saying just leave because I don't care, but if I'm the mayor, I'm going to say like, look, if you want to go that route, how about I find a way to like make your life maybe a little bit miserable or something. I don't like threats. If we want to try to fix downtown, let's try to fix downtown. If you want to come to my office and you want to sit down, but this run into the Business Journal and basically threatening to send new employees or whatever, if you don't do this, I'm going to do that. Well, then, okay, let's see.
But, Alvin, didn't the mayor's office do that with Bob O'Loughlin? Remember when they said, that he really kind of needs to put a little bit more of his money where his mouth is, when he was the only one who was investing in downtown St. Louis at the time?
Well, maybe that's you come at him the same way. And the fact that Stifel's been down there since 1890, a lot has gone on in St. Louis since 1890, so I don't want to hear that.
That's true.
Okay.
However, the mayor, she, for whatever reason, her administration did not go over well with Bob Clark, so he's moving his company to Hazelwood.
Okay.
Not a guy you want to upset. The state is now moving to Chesterfield. When someone like Ron Kruszewski says, hey, I'm looking at Dallas now, that's pretty serious, especially when the city, a third of its budget relies on the earnings tax paid by those workers.
Well, and I also think when you talk about being a threat, I'll give the guy points for saying out loud what he probably was more than willing to say in a closed meeting when he's sitting around with the mayor and the mayor's people and say, look, if you guys don't do something, I'm going to do this. So I'll give him points for coming out and saying, here's what I'm going to do. Now, you want to call that a threat, that's fine.
You have to.
But is it an empty threat or is it a promise?
No, what I'm saying is the way that whole tenor of that article came off to me, there's a lot of ways to say a lot of things. That came off to me like a threat.
I
agree it did.
I think the businessmen are just so unhappy right now and frustrated. And, in the old days when the police department had state control and the businessmen said downtown will remain safe, and it did. And now, we're in the middle of a renaissance, but of course, with local control, the politicians are going to look to where the people are, and that's in North and South St. Louis, and put the protection there, and downtown is left in the lurch. And I think the businessmen have a right to be frustrated.
Well, and the $98 million, asking for the $98 million at least of the $250 million to be spent, that came from a Greater St. Louis Inc. letter to the aldermanic panel. So I think everybody's getting a little just sort of like they can't breathe at this point, because it's like, when are we going to use this money? The time has passed.
Last year, to move on to another subject, we talked about the case of Christopher Dunn, who in 1991 was found guilty for murdering Rico Rogers in 1990, based largely on the testimony of two individuals, a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old. And last year, in February of last year, a Texas county judge said that Christopher Dunn should be released. And on Next Up, our program here on 9 PBS, his wife explained why.
He was arrested the next day, had a public defender who was quite overloaded by the looks of it, met with him maybe a total of 20 minutes before she represented him, and really didn't bring any of his alibi witnesses. He had 7, in addition to the person he was on the phone with. Didn't bring any of that to court. The 2 witnesses did recant. They explained that they decided to say my husband was the guilty party just because they didn't like him. And once they identified him, they kind of felt they had to double down on it. So all those things were brought to bear, and that is what led to the judge saying, based on these facts, no jury would now convict Christopher Dunn.
This week, another judge, Jason Sengheiser of the St. Louis Circuit Court, came out with a similar pronouncement and said that Mr. Dunn should be released from his cell in Licking, Missouri. However, the Attorney General for the state, Andrew Bailey, intervened. And despite the fact that there were 7 witnesses who weren't called and the public defender only spent 20 minutes on the case and the 2 actual witnesses recanted, he is still in jail because Bailey appealed this all the way to to the Missouri Supreme Court, which said, okay, he can stay in jail. But I wonder, Alvin, Reid, do you think that Andrew Bailey is really acting on principle, or does he have facts we don't know about that would insist that Mr. Dunn remain behind bars?
No, I think Andrew Bailey is acting like a man who's got a primary on August the 6th, and win or lose that primary, I think Christopher Dunn would be on his way to actual freedom on August the 7th. I think it's purely political. I did ask at the press conference, Judge Booker Shaw was appointed, kind of a special counsel on this case, and I asked, Judge Shaw, do you think this is just an election, stunt? And he said, I don't want to, go into anybody's political motivation, but he didn't say, no, it's not. So I do believe that that's what this is all about. And I would just hope that if he's playing this game, I would hope that Mr. Bailey made clear to the Department of Corrections that nothing is to happen to Mr. Dunn between now and when he is released from prison. I think it's purely political. And I think I trust Gabe Gore. I trust Judge Shaw. Yeah. I trust the judge who made this ruling, that I think all the legalese has been put in a place where this sentence should be vacated.
Make that 2 judges, right?
2 judges.
Well, and I think also it's just, let him go. Also, he's been there 34 years. Good. There are people who are actually convicted of murders who there's no question about who don't serve 34 years. So, however you want to cut this, let him go. If Attorney General Bailey has something he wants to appeal, by all means appeal it. Do whatever you think is the judicious, legal thing to do. But let Mr. Dunn go. Just let him out. The judge said let him go.
But would a human being actually, for political purposes, keep another human being behind bars?
There are people who put people behind bars for political purposes. Why would you find it hard that someone would keep somebody there for political purposes? Yeah. To me, that's just a continuation of a long-standing tradition of doing just about anything to achieve something politically.
And also, Andrew Bailey has a track record of just basically, I'll do anything, say anything, sue anybody, waste the state's money, et cetera, so I can possibly win this office, that I was appointed to. So he's got a track record that's just kind of like, you really don't care about anything except yourself.
All right. Joe, I want to ask you.
I won't be voting for him.
Yeah, I guess not. Yeah.
We weren't sure.
You still got time. You still got time. You can think it over.
You like Will Sharp?
Clearly very contemplative about it.
Hey, Joe, I want to ask you about the latest involving the St. Louis Public Schools, which you did discuss on this panel a couple of weeks ago under the very careful supervision of Mr. Alvin Reid. And you did a great job, Alvin, as always, in my absence. So, where do we begin?
Where do
Phoenix Jackson is a Houston publicist, I guess, and she was hired by the St. Louis Public Schools to be the chief communications officer. And then she came out with an online message this week that said that she's a spirit who likes to help other spirits evolve. But the key that bothered a lot of people is that she has a home in Houston and a home in St. Louis. And I guess this caused some controversy, so much that the Board of Education has decided that they're going to halt all hiring with the St. Louis Public Schools until they sort things out. Isn't that taking things to an extreme for a woman who's just working remotely?
I think that's, though a good move, scratching the surface. Of course they should review the hiring policies when, and let's not forget that this is a job that pays salary range $145,000 to $165,000 a year. That's not chump change, okay? For a person who has never worked for a school district as a communications person, who doesn't live in St. Louis and was intimating and has kind of backtracked that I'm kind of going to be a two-city kind of person to maintain this balance. I could not believe when I read this story that of all the people who applied for this job, and I'm guessing at 145 to 165 in the communications field, where we know there are unemployed people, we all know that this was the best they could come up with someone who said, I don't know if I want to live in St. Louis all the time.
Only Sagittarian, though.
There is that with the balance, spirit helping spirits. I mean, it sounded like a bunch of new age nonsense, quite frankly, is what it sounded like. And that you are hiring not a $70,000 a year position as somebody's assistant. We're talking, let's call it $150,000 a year. And then when you find out that other recent hires that have happened from the school board have been former associates of the superintendent from Seattle and their spouses, and people who all founded a company and their spouse. I think by all means that the school board, if they have any sense of responsibility for being a watchdog over taxpayers' money, they need to review their hiring processes to find out how all of this happened. And if they review it and say, we checked it all out, it's great, Phoenix Jackson has the potential to be the greatest communicator in the history of communications, whatever. But the idea that they've put a freeze on it, I think is a remarkably smart and prudent move.
Agreed. And the fact that these are not exactly the salad days for the St. Louis Public School District, and that this is the woman that you've chosen to be your communications officer, communicating as we lead up to, we're building up to a new school year, that in her mind, the most important thing about this new job are the exposed brick walls and the concrete floors and the balance that gives her as a Sagittarian. And as much as we're joking about that, she's a communications officer. She's communicating the mission of SLPS.
Fairly, I mean, that was in a tweet or some sort of social online message about her condo.
Well, that's also when she was talking about how she was going to be a two-city creature.
Right.
And we're paying that kind of money for somebody who doesn't even intend to be here.
And still wants to continue.
And still wants to continue. People work remotely. Have you not?
Charlie, I'm going to ask you, I know as a provocateur you have to do some things, so I'm going to go with that. But this is a job, and it's going to be, now it's oh, well, no, I meant I'm going to go home on the weekends. The fact that you don't even refer to this as your home. So this is the head of communications, Monday through Friday, 5 o'clock, gotta go.
There are people in places like Bozeman, Montana, who are working remotely for top corporations.
But not talking about a transportation shortage for a school district that is besieged.
Well, that's another issue.
And cannot accommodate its students.
Well, all right. I don't know anything about this lady other than what I wrote. She might be excellent at this job. She's off to a horrible, horrible start because she didn't communicate very well. First of all, that's what I would say. All right, but you know, I'm very serious about, you know, public education. And in this day and age, what I consider to be serious, boy, this new age doesn't. Well, and it's kind of like a lesson that I said, like, dude, you gotta like, as whatever this is, I can't just put a big nope, she'll never work out by her, because this is a different age. Now, as far as who's being hired and where they're coming from, and this woman off to a bad start with me, but I am not going to say this will all be a disaster.
How about a guy by the name Bill McClellan of Aaron Dimmick, who works for the Office of Administration in Jefferson City, but he's working remotely because in the Pensacola area of Florida, he's running for Congress while making $103,000 a year from the state of Missouri.
Yeah, you know, there's something when the school district, which tends to be dysfunctional, when the school district does stuff like this, you go, oh, I wish they wouldn't do it. But state government in a Republican administration, to have this manager trainee guy making, like you say, $103,000 a year, but actually living in Florida and campaigning for Congress is a full-time job. You just think, you have to be kidding. I mean, you have to be willing, if you want to make six figures from the state of Missouri, you have to be willing to live here and work here. I mean, Florida's a lot of sunshine, but it's crazy.
Well, I remember the late Joanne Wayne, a city alderwoman, who, remember, she used to complain about the Lambert director at the time, and they made her, and said, you know, I'm tired of people who come to the city to make their bread, then go to the county to make their bed. You work for the state of Missouri, live in the state of Missouri. You work for the St. Louis Public Schools, live in the St. Louis Public School District. Or go find another job. I'm not saying you have to take that job.
Joe, let me ask you about people traveling around the country. You know, 63% of the customers at Lambert Field fly Southwest Airlines, which announced today that it's getting rid of that cattle call, open seating. They're going to start assigning seating for the first time in 50 years.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Hallelujah. I just want to buy a seat and I want to know where it's at. I don't want to go in there and feel like, and what seat did I get today? Now, we are talking a first world problem here, okay? You know that.
But it's a problem that probably affects more people than any other topic
and I would bet
we brought up today.
And I bet you, well, schools might. But I just want to buy a ticket, and it says you're sitting in whatever it is. And so I know where my seat is, and I'll pay for wherever it is I sit. I don't want to have to call 48 hours in advance. I don't want to have to come up with a secret password. I don't want to have to identify how many of these photos have a bicycle in them.
Wait till you see I'm so sick of being a C person.
Right.
I mean, and even if I call it the exact time I'm supposed to, I never make the A list. I'm always a B32 is the most I can hope for.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
and if middle seat.
And I get on and I'm a C13, I know I'm buying it, and I know I'm sitting there, so I don't have to worry about it.
And you know your wife is going to be sitting, Kathy's going to be sitting right next to you.
She takes another flight, usually.
She doesn't want to sit next to you.
Why don't you buy early bird seating, gentlemen?
That's what we
I have done that too. Look, put it this way. Southwest is one of the few things in this burg that I actually trust, so I'm going to defer.
That's true.
You know what? I'm just going to say, like, Southwest, thumbs up. Thank you for sticking it out with us. Right.
But wait till we see the cost of an assigned seat.
There you go.
$1,000.
Yeah, there we go.
We'll be long.
If it drives up the price, then we're going to be mad.
No, well, why should it cost more to have an assigned seat? If there's so many seats on the airplane.
Because the investors are now on the board of Southwestern Airlines.
Yeah, why does a gallon of gas cost $3.80?
Let's go to the old mailbag and see what viewers had to say about last week's program. I worked downtown around the same period Bill did, and I agree downtown was more fun in those early days. I think downtown should support the hotels and restaurants it has and work toward making itself more of a tourist stop. That from Charlotte Coker of Baldwin, Missouri. We also heard from Kevin Walters of St. Chuck, who wrote, if raises for city employees are in the running for RAM settlement spending, only employees that are not in an office should get it. Trash collectors, bus drivers, policemen on the street, and public utility outdoor workers. Teresa Kirschmer of St. Genevieve, Missouri wrote, "Can't our city leaders visit Cincinnati, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and other cities that seem to have been revitalized and come up with a master plan? Thank you, Teresa." You can write us care of 9PBS. That zip code is 63108. Don't forget those emails, Donnybrook@9pbs.org. And on social media, use the hashtag DonnybrookSTL while calling the 9 line at 314-512-9094. And make sure you listen to us on your favorite podcast source, wherever that might be. Well, I will say this. We had a special birthday in the house this past, I think it was yesterday, when Bill ripped another year off the calendar. There's just a few of them that he's ripped off through the years. And so we thought that to celebrate, we would go to Geneva and the team from Schnucks Richmond Heights. You do shop there at the Schnucks. They all recognize you.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm thrilled with this. I thank you.
You're too.
I'm trying to think. You know, I after the Democrats pushed Joe Biden out, and I think only the Republicans recognize the wisdom of age. So I might have to change my thinking. But, thank you, everybody, very much.
Well, you know, just 3 candles there. They don't teach math in the public schools anymore.
Well, that would win out.
It would be 77 divided by 3.
Wow.
How does that go?
Yeah, there's a fraction in there.
There's a fraction.
Right.
There'll be a third in there.
Make a wish there, Coach.
Okay, well, I'm hoping this isn't one of those
No,
gag
it's not.
candles.
He still got the fastball.
Perfect.
Oh, well, many happy returns.
Thank you very much.
All right. And that will conclude this award-winning edition of Donnybrook. Thanks again to Ken Binney, who supplied the artwork behind us. You can contact his website for more information. And a little thank you to Mary J. Funk of Mascoutah, who years ago at an online auction won a duck here on the panel. And she sent it back to us. So it's right over here for your viewing pleasure. Have a great week. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.